Okay, can everybody see my screen? I'm hoping.
Yes, I do.
Okay,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much. All right. First of all, yeah, thank you to everybody for being here. I know we've had quite a few presentations, really, really good ones. So thanks for staying this long for the last one. And I hope you can hear me. We've got a really crazy storm outside right now, and I also have a noisy dog. So if you're having trouble hearing me, please let me or Kurt know, and then he'll let me know. But let's get on with it. So today I'm going to be talking about curriculum and lesson design for young learners. Just to introduce myself, my name is Martin Sedaghat. I'm from San Diego, California. I have been living and working in Niigata City in Niigata Prefecture since 2003. I was originally an ALT for a long time, elementary school and junior high school. And then I worked at an international high school as an English and homeroom teacher for 2 years. And since 2018, I've been working at a preschool, which is where today's topic is going to be focused on. Also, right now, I'm currently doing a distance learning program through Birmingham University to get a master's in TESOL. Okay, just a little bit about where I'm working right now. It's called the Niigata University of Health and Welfare International Preschool. There's a little picture at the top. Um, the name international is a little weird because I'm the only English speaker there, but I think they chose that name because they really wanted to focus on having a lot of English classes. But it probably doesn't mean the same thing as what most people think of when they think of international school. It's a really small school. We have 14 students right now, aged from 0 to 5. And they have English lessons twice a day, every day of the week. So they get quite a bit of English. As I said, I'm the only English teacher there. And when I started, they basically just said, do what you want, make your own curriculum. And I looked online trying to get ideas for curriculums. I didn't find any that I was happy with, so I ended up making my own. And that's sort of the inspiration for what I want to talk about today. But before we get into that, I would like to ask a question of you guys, of the chat. What kind of school do you teach in? What age, what levels? So let's take a minute or so. I'm going to look back here in the chat and see what everybody says. Okay, daycare, 2 years and up, all right. Preschool, yep. Kindergarten, okay, yeah, kindergarten, private, cool. Okay, yeah, that looks good. Yeah, I think one of the interesting opportunities I have is that, let's share it again here, and that in my case, I'm at one school and I teach the same kids multiple times a day. I know in a lot of situations, like when my son was in kindergarten, they had an English teacher come maybe once a week or or twice a month or something. So you don't get a lot of exposure. You really have to be careful about what you're picking and teaching. You don't have a lot of time with the kids. I have a lot of time with my students, so I'm really lucky in that I can kind of experiment and try a lot of different techniques, some which work, some which don't. Okay, let's look at my notes here. So today I'm going to talk about mainly 5 things. One, basics of what a curriculum is, how I thought about and made my own curriculum, important points to think about when you're making your curriculum. I'll give some examples of the 4 curricula that I have made and used, as well as some challenges. I don't have all the answers. There's a lot of things I haven't been able to do that I've failed in. So maybe that's something we can work together on here and come up with some good ideas and solutions. And at the end, there will be questions. I will have some time for questions. Also, at the end, there will be a QR code on the screen that you can view and download this whole presentation. So don't worry about taking too many notes. Just sit back and yeah, let's see what we got here. First of all, what is a curriculum? And when I say curriculum, I know some people might call it syllabus. I've seen that there's a lot of back and forth about what is curriculum versus syllabus. I'm going to call it a curriculum, and by that I mean one, the goals. So what do I want students to learn and achieve in the year? The methods that I'm using to help them learn and achieve that, especially how do I make the lessons memorable? The materials, what are the students and I using? And finally, the assessment. How can I check that the lessons are actually working out and we're doing what we're supposed to do? Um, to make a perfect curriculum, well, you can't. There is no perfect curriculum, at least not that I know of. The curriculum has to adapt to your own situation. Every school is different. Every student, of course, is different. As I saw, people had just written, some people work in a kindergarten full time, some people are eikaiwa, some people teach in elementary schools. You see that you have your own students, you see them at different sort of paces. And also, teachers can't really make a curriculum in a void. By void, I mean total freedom to do everything you want. You have to balance what the parents want, because the parents are often the customers or clients in our case. Also, what the administration, your bosses, the business, if you're working in an eikaiwa, what they want, and what you want to teach. So you got to balance these things. You're not just doing 100% of what you want to do. And also in this presentation, I don't want to just sort of copy and paste my curriculum. I'm not going to do that. One, because it's made for my school, so it might not fit your school. And two, my boss would probably not be that happy if I did that and sort of gave away all the secrets. But I'm going to give as many examples as I can. So I can't talk about a perfect curriculum, but I can maybe give some ideas about what makes a good curriculum. Looking at goals, first of all, the vocabulary and topics have to be relevant to the students' lives and their world. So, for example, I did a unit on birds once, and there's lots of different birds that you can teach. Sparrow, eagle, vulture, chicken, rooster, all kinds of things. So I had to think about what my students are very, very young, 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old. So what are they going to see in their daily lives? They're not going to see a peacock all the time. So I didn't really teach that. I thought, around the school, around the area we live, what are the birds that they see? We see sparrows. We have a lot of pheasants living around the area, crows all over the place. So I'm picking words that they're going to be able to engage with in their life. Of course, you want to build on what has been taught before, so students can use their words they've learned in new ways throughout the year, throughout the month, and see how they're getting better. Has to be realistic and achievable. Think about their age and what they can actually do. And finally, language skills versus language knowledge. When I say knowledge, for me, knowledge is just memorizing words. They remember 100 words, whereas skills is learning words and then being able to combine it with other words and grammatical structures to express themselves in new ways. Going on to my own goals, these are 4 goals that I wrote. I give a copy of these to the parents when students start at the school, so they kind of know what I'm doing. One, I want students to enjoy English through a variety of learning styles, and I will get into those styles later. I want to help students to develop basic communication and social skills. So this is a really important one for this age, because just teaching English alone isn't really going to do it. They're at the age where they're developing these skills like sharing, taking turns, helping each other, working in a group, expressing their likes and dislikes to each other, learning about each other. So English can kind of work hand in hand with that. Lots of activities and games can help that. So they're not just learning English, they're also learning these social skills. Of course, I want students to feel comfortable and confident in their English. That's a really big point too. I know from teaching in junior high school for a long time, a lot of students had no confidence in their English. They were scared of English because a lot of times it was just a quiz, a test, an obstacle on the way to get to another level. And I think kindergarten, preschool, that's an age where we can really get some confidence in their English. So maybe that will help them when they move on to elementary school and junior high school and get into kind of more difficult language structures. And finally, give students a baseline vocabulary. And I will give examples of that too. Okay, and then for methods, I want students to have a degree of control over some aspects of the lesson. And I've written there daily helper, which I will show a picture of in a little bit what that means. Balanced activities, you have to engage different styles of learning, multiple intelligences, which is also coming up in a bit. And also you have to be flexible enough to allow for trying new ideas. If your curriculum is too rigid and you have to do, or if your methods, sorry, are too rigid and you have to, in your mind, do step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 every time in the same way, that doesn't really let you bring in new ideas. Also addressing needs of young learners, especially younger learners. They have really short attention spans, 5 minutes, 10 minutes at a time. So you have to have lots of different activities, things make it interesting and make it challenging too. There's a fine line between making it being boring and too easy and too difficult. So you have to let them challenge themselves to get that sort of satisfaction about overcoming a new language. And for my own methods, some of you who may have studied different methodologies in the past, there's the direct method. I use a little bit of that, which means I use barely any Japanese in my classes, even with the babies. Lots of English, which is then reinforced by pictures, flashcards, toys, other things we have in this school. And also of total physical response, TPR. So lots of gestures, right, and actions. So for example, when we talk about the weather, we have sort of finger movements for every piece of weather. Like for the sun is moving your hands like this. For rain is like this. Cloudy is kind of drawing the clouds with their fingers. So even for babies who are sort of nonverbal, they might not be able to say it's sunny, it's cloudy, it's windy or whatever, but they can show with their hands these gestures, which means that that's their form of output. Feelings too, lots of different things. I always want it to be a positive and low anxiety atmosphere. For me, that means gentle error correction. I don't call out kids when they get anything wrong, but I sometimes will repeat what they said, but make sure I'm saying it in the right way a few times, or give really, really positive reinforcement when other kids say something correctly, so the other kids overhear that and hopefully pick up on that. And finally, learning through doing, keeping things hands-on, arts and crafts. I am a big proponent of arts and crafts, and I might go over that a bit later. Okay, and I have a picture here. I mentioned before the daily helper. What that means is at the beginning of the class, every lesson, on the left I have a little set of cards with every student's name and picture on it. So every lesson for example, maybe tomorrow morning, the next kid on the list, that's Akira. That means he's my helper for that lesson. And what that means is that he gets to, I ask him any questions we have, I ask him first. Any game we play, he goes first. He helps me to clean up if we do certain activities or put something away. And also at the end of the lesson, he can either choose any book that we have to read, or I have some cards you can see on the right there, these sort of music cards I've made, which let us review. These are songs that are not necessarily attached to the lesson, but songs that we've done over the past few weeks, months, or years. And then I'll pick 3 and he can choose one of those. And with that, and then he can choose the one that he wants to do. And that lets us kind of review past topics and they enjoy a song. But essentially, I'm giving him a little bit of control over the lesson. Also with games, if we're doing bingo, I may have a few different versions of it and he can choose which one he wants to do that day. So, I mean, I've made the lesson plan, but I've also allowed for certain parts that he can pick and choose what he wants to do. And then the next lesson will go to the next student, so on. This also lets me, it is a small class, but if you have a big class, this can work really well so that you make sure that every student, at least at some point, is going to get a little more increased attention from you. So you don't, because we tend to sort of focus on the really, really good students and the students who might be a little more problematic. Students in the middle can sometimes get less attention. Okay. And I hope I'm not talking too fast or anything. If I am, please let me know. Let me just check. Everything okay here? Yeah, okay. Let me go back in there. All right. Talking about materials, materials have to be simple and easy to use. They have to be adaptable for multiple uses, different activities. Hands-on and realia is really important. And by that, I mean having a toy apple that the students can hold and pass around and manipulate is always going to be better than a picture of an apple. And they have to be appropriate to the age and the ability. If you have one-year-old students, they're very, very different than four-year-old students. The one-year-olds, you have to think about safety. You don't want to use small things that they can put in their mouth that they can eat or have somehow hurt themselves. Where for four-year-olds, you're going to think more about the level of maturity that they have. You know, they're if I have a set of cards, there are some students I know that they're mature enough to handle the card games and not tear them apart or destroy them. You know, every teacher has put time and effort and money into making their materials. You have to think about what's the best time to use them. And also, finally, I didn't put this on here, but you have to know about your school rules. You know, my school, they don't really want me to use too much screen time. I have an iPad, but I basically just use it to play music. I don't show it the screens that much. They don't want me to let kids play around with screens that much. There are many great things the iPad can do, but in my situation, I don't have that chance so much. Here are some pictures of some of the materials I use. The top two, these are for the youngest kids, so you can see lots of things that they can hold safely and manipulate toy animals. Mr. Potato Head, I use colored scarves a lot for different activities, rubber ducks for counting. And at the bottom, the bottom two are for the older kids. This would be 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. Clip cards, for example, phonics and things like that. So they're using the, what do you call it, the clothespins to kind of indicate their answer. They have to be able to manually manipulate those clothespins. And on the bottom right is bingo. Lots of different things you can do with bingo, phonics, numbers, reading CVC words. And again, that's something I wouldn't do with the younger kids because it's not safe for them to have those beads. It's also not too difficult for them. Okay. And finally, the assessment. That's definitely the hardest part for me. In the previous workshop, right before this one, there was a lot of really, really good talk about assessments for elementary school. I think it's really hard for preschool because there are no quizzes, there's no tests, there isn't a national standard for 2-year-olds. So it's something we have to come up with ourselves. One thing I like to do if we have an open school with the parents, we couldn't do it last year because of Corona, so we took a lot of videos, and then the videos then help me. I can watch those videos and then look at what I'm doing and see the response of the kids and take notes on that, see how it's going. And also progress checklist can be really, really useful. So I've written, this is just a sample of one I use. So things that I would expect 0 and 2-year-olds to be able to do and 3 to 5-year-olds to be able to do after a year or so. And I don't grade the students. I would never give them this paper with a circle or an X on it. It's for me to assess myself. If I have a student who's been there for 2 years, but they can't count from 1 to 10 and show the numbers, then maybe there's something I'm doing wrong. I need to reevaluate the way I'm teaching. Okay. Now I want to turn it over to you guys a little bit. So of the 4 parts of the curriculum we talked about, are there any specifically that you are interested in learning more about that you would want to work on yourself? So please take a minute to comment in the chat if you can. Okay, ooh, a little bit of everything. Methods, materials, goals. Okay. Methods. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of methods, a few goals. Okay. So yeah, seems to be a bit of everything. I see mostly methods. Okay. Yearly, monthly planning. Yep. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, I'm gonna move ahead with it. Hopefully, we'll be trying to cover a lot of these things throughout the rest of the presentation. At the end, there will be some more question time as well as my contact info if people need to ask specific questions. Okay. All right. This one really, again, I'm not going to go over all of this, but when you're making a curriculum, these are the really important questions you need to ask yourself. Just a couple to highlight here. For example, how often, how long your classes, how often are they? I see my kids twice a day, so they have a lot of exposure to English and to me. If you see them only once a week or once a month, it's going to be very, very different. Also, the size and shape of your classroom. I've seen some schools which are pretty cramped, and that can change your lesson a lot. If you have really small kids, you need space to move around. If you're doing that TPR, if you're doing a lot of songs that involve dancing and moving, and for older kids too, you might need space for tables. When I do phonics and writing stuff, I have my older kids sit down at a table with chairs to kind of simulate what they're going to be doing in elementary school, and you need space for that. And the last one there, style of learning. So I'm going to get into that now. Some people may be familiar with the theory of multiple intelligences. This was put forward by Howard Gardner of Harvard University. He wrote a book about it in 1983, which you can see at the top right there. And kind of until this time, IQ tests, which tested linguistic, logistical, and spatial abilities, were used to figure out measures of intelligence, IQ of whatever the number is. But Gardner sort of theorized 8, or sometimes, depending on how you see it, more types of intelligence. So I use this graphic a lot, and you can see here the eight types, the 8 main types: visual, musical, bodily, interpersonal, and you can see the rest there. So when I'm making my own lessons, I have this chart on hand, and I always, in my lessons, I try to hit always at least 4 or 5 of these. So I'm going to give a few examples of that here. So visual, that's the easiest one. Flashcards, picture books. Musical, songs and chants. Kinesthetic, that means moving. So finger plays, Eensy Weensy Spider. The wheels on the bus go round and round. TPR, moving. Interpersonal is sort of their relationship with each other. So the social skills that I mentioned before, sharing, taking turns, and also giving information about classmates. So for example, you may interview a student, the teacher and the student, you interview the student, but then you ask the other students to give information from that interview you heard. So when you listen to student A, or you ask student A some questions, you ask student B, what does student A like? Why does he like it? And then the other 4, there's verbal, reading out, sort of identifying letters, phonics. Logical would be puzzles. Naturalistic can be a tough one. For some schools, for my school, we take them on a walk once or twice a day in the area. There's some parks around the university, so they're able to kind of collect and manipulate leaves, sticks, flowers, acorns. They collect them, bring them back to school, and we can do a lot of things like, for example, they may write their name or the first letter name with acorns, glue it onto a paper, so they've made their initial made out of acorns, or using sticks to create a stick figure and talk about it. Drawing faces on leaves. Like for Halloween, they collected leaves, we painted them white, and they made little ghosts out of them. So anything involving natural materials, especially if they collect them themselves. And finally, intrapersonal, which is talking about yourself, something that you made. It could be a short speech, for example. That's all intrapersonal. Going back to the chat, in your own lessons, in your own activities, what are some, can you think of any that may engage multiple types of intelligence? If you do have some ideas, please share them in the chat. Let's take a look here.
Joel had some questions in the chat. I guess since you're
sorry,
reading
yes,
chat, you could answer them when you want, now or after this exercise. Up to you.
Sure, go ahead. What do we have here?
One was, do you do parroting or tautology most of the time with your students?
Wow, I'm not actually familiar with tautology. Can anyone give me a good definition of that?
Galaxy 09, do you want to elaborate on your question for us? if you're there. You might have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, hello.
Oh, yeah.
Hi. I'm Mary.
Oh,
That
hello.
question from I was the one who raised that question. But tautology is all about the modeling, about the vocabulary, and thing that you're gonna do, then act or teach, or when you do the speaking activity, you are doing the modeling of the pronunciation. How often do you do that?
Oh, okay. I see. I see. Um, I don't focus too much on the pronunciation. For me, sort of the main focus is just to get them to talk and to be confident in their speaking. With the older students, then I do work more in like phonics and especially like specific pronunciation, L versus R, B versus P. So that would come a bit later. For the little kids, I don't do a lot of repeat after me. I do use flashcards. But I don't pull the words from them that much. I try to let them use it kind of naturally more. I do a little, I guess, if the word's parroting, I would do that more as they get older.
A follow-up question, would it be okay?
Sure, sure.
It's all about the speech difficulties of ESL or EFL students. So we usually know that Japanese students are they have difficulties on the sound of and
Yeah.
o. So do you are you really particular with the speech articulators?
Not as I was saying a little before, not too much. With my oldest students now, I am doing more phonics-based lessons. So there are activities where I do practice that. Um, but not specifically. I do have certain games and activities to practice. I'm right now. I'm mainly focusing on the initial sounds, like again, like light versus right, or back versus pack, B and P. I haven't gotten into uh, other phoneme families like double O's and ERs as much. Um, I think I would say mainly my focus is just to get them to use English to be comfortable with it before I start putting in more sort of rules and tasks like that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Looking over here, let's see here. Science-based lessons, yeah, those are really, really good. I've done a little bit of that, like colors, for example. I think I have a picture of that later, but mixing colors, not just saying that yellow and red make orange, but actually showing them with physical paint, yellow and red together make a different color. Music activities, those are really good, especially if you have musical instruments. And I've had students make musical instruments. It's really easy to make what do you call maracas or clackers, and then you do a song that uses those, and they can use their own crafts in the song. It's especially good for performances for parents, like Christmas time. That always goes over really well. But yeah, rhythm too. Those are all really good. Okay, let's jump in here, back in here. Okay. Okay. Um, okay. And I kind of made this presentation in, what's the word? Top down, bottom, I forget which one is, but starting more general, and I will get a little more specific now. For me, I've split my classes. So as I said in the very beginning, I have 15 students age 0 to 5. In the first 2 years, we taught them all at the same time. I quickly learned that that didn't work out very well. Initially, we thought it would be great if the older students could help the younger students and so on, but as we got more and more students, it just became kind of unmanageable. And also the needs of the students were totally different as their levels became unbalanced. So I was able to split them up into 2 groups. So we have 0 to 2-year-olds and 3 to 5-year-olds. 0 to 2 I call the caterpillar class, and 3 to 5-year-olds I call the butterfly class. I would like to split it again, but we just don't have the time or staff for it right now. So that's where we are. So some of the differences between the 2 ages that I teach that I always think about when planning things out. Of course, the youngest kids have very short attention spans, so I never teach them for more than 20 minutes. Over 20 minutes and it's done. So I try to plan my lessons in sort of 5-minute blocks, 5 minutes of a song, 5 minutes of a book, 5 minutes of a game, to keep their interest. For the older kids, they can pay attention for much longer, 30 minutes, although my lessons sometimes go 40, 50 minutes, especially if we're doing something with crafts, arts and crafts. They could color and draw for hours. For input output for the younger kids, it's going to be almost all input. Most students are nonverbal. They don't even speak Japanese yet, let alone English. But for older kids, they're speaking, sometimes speaking a lot. So there's a good balance of input and output. So your activities, you can really use speaking activities with older kids. I talked about a little bit before, physical development. For the younger kids, you have to think about not only what's safe, but what they can do. Certain games, they just don't have the finger ability or the bodily control to do it. Whereas older kids, it's more about social skills. Competitive games, that's a big one. I have some students that they haven't learned yet how to be graceful winners or losers. So have to be careful about games that involves students specifically winning and losing. So I try to do cooperative games where they all win together or lose together. And in Kurt's workshop earlier today, I think someone had mentioned a game called Forbidden Island. It's a really good board game where it's cooperative. It's all players against the game itself. So everybody wins or loses together. So those kind of games can work really well. Also, repetition. For little kids, repetition is super important. And when I show you my curriculum, that'll make a little more sense. For the older kids, oh, hello? Is there something there? No? Okay. For the older kids, I can't get away with repeating too much. They always want to do new things. That doesn't mean to come up with new games, but to have variations of games. So like the bingo, the clip cards, what's the game called? Go Fish, things like that. There you can make different versions for all kinds of things, whether it's certain vocabulary, phonics, numbers, different things like that. And so they're playing the same game, but with different topics. For flashcards, especially for little kids, I keep it very simple, just like clip art with a white background. Whereas older kids, you can use photos and videos. If I use like proper photos with a whole background with little kids, they can get distracted and may not be sure what you're trying to call attention to in the picture. And finally, for younger kids, board books and something with minimal text like Hungry Caterpillar is best for them. Whereas my older kids now, they tend to choose the books that actually have stories like The Little House, Corduroy, things like that. Okay. I'm going to talk about the specific curriculums now. So I have sort of 4 curriculums I have made and used, 2 for the youngest and 2 for the older kids. So for the younger kids, my very first curriculum that I use when they're first starting out, I kind of call it core vocabulary based. So what I've done is I've chosen 10 main themes. I've written a few of them here, like colors, animals, body parts. And I split them up between the morning and the afternoon lessons. So for example, Monday morning lesson is always colors. Tuesday afternoon is always animals. Doesn't necessarily mean the same animals. So one week I could do pets, another week might be wild animals, like they might see in a zoo or something. And the next one would be sea animals, fish, sharks, dolphins, whales. So the theme is the same week to week, but you can use a variety of vocabulary. And also so that's the repetition part there. So again, week after week, they're getting those sort of core topics, colors, shapes, numbers, but I'm not always using the same materials. So I have a paper. So for animals, I have 10 different animal songs. So for one week, I'll use 1 or 2 of those songs. The next week, I'll use the other 2 songs. So over the months and the year, they will hear all the songs multiple times, but it's not the same words in the same song every week. But it's got to be, and the class has to be a balance of songs and picture books and activities. Like I said, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes or so for a 15 to 20-minute lesson. And this interaction is pretty much all teacher to student, of course. These are very, very young students. As they get a little older, I might get it more advanced with more just not core vocabulary, but more varied themes. So I ended up making a list of 48 sort of English topics, including colors, numbers, but also birds, desserts, summer clothing, nature, things like that. So because we don't have a summer or winter break pretty much. It's, four weeks in a month, 12 months in a year. So that's why I chose 48. So I kind of organized it into one theme per week. So like say 1 week is summer clothing. So on Monday, I'm going to introduce the vocabulary and the song. Always I have to have a song connected to that theme. And then throughout the week, they're doing all that. And on Friday, I'm going to end it with a craft that connects to that theme. But that is still very much teacher-student interaction. Here's some pictures of a few of the crafts I've done with the youngest kids. And some people before mentioned science. So that can be really, really good. So for example, like the color, I put different colors in a bag so that they could safely and cleanly mix the colors together with their fingers. At the bottom left, that's some maracas we made with kind of plastic Easter eggs and uncooked rice. They made binoculars out of paper rolls that they can then use on their walks around to identify trees and bugs and birds. On the right, there's a number book that they made. I wrote the part, but they stuck in stickers and the, what do you call those things? The wire cleaners to make the numbers so that they made their own book that they could take home. Colors using coffee filters for butterflies, and then weather. So lots of different crafts you can do. And thank God for Pinterest. That's where this all comes from. Okay, and moving on to the butterfly class. That's the older kids. So the 3 to 5-year-olds. So these are mostly kids who have been there now for 3 years. They can understand everything I'm saying. They can speak English, fairly well. I can understand what they want to say. So I'm doing more complex stuff with them. So their curriculum that I first made was project-based. So I took the same 48 themes, but I organized them differently. Rather than somewhat randomly like it was before, I made one main theme per month and split that into smaller weekly themes. And I'll give an example in a second of that. So rather than every week doing a kind of easy craft, sorry, if I go back a second here, these crafts took, one class to do 15, 20 minutes. They were not long-term things. For the older kids, we're going to do much bigger things. So end each month with a project, maybe a bigger craft, maybe a skit that they do together, maybe a speech that they make. And this is something they're working on a little bit every week so that at the end of the month, it all kind of comes together. So for example, one month, the theme was all about myself. So within that, you've got body, feelings, clothing, actions. It could also maybe involve family, talking about their families. So for the final project, we got big butcher paper, put it on the floor. They would lie down on it. We would trace their bodies, and then over a couple weeks, they had time then to draw their faces, to draw clothing, to color it, to add whatever embellishments they wanted. And then at the end of the month, we stuck them on the wall, and they were able to talk about themselves, to talk about the colors, the type of clothing they have, their hair color, body parts and things, their height and stuff like that. And that worked out pretty nicely. Still, this is nice because now it's more student to teacher interaction. They're expressing themselves. It's not just me talking the whole time. And the last one is my newest curriculum, which it's kind of a work in progress. I don't know how successful it's going to be. I guess I would call it more dialogue based. So these students now, they know these 48 themes. They know these 48 sort of sets of English. They have a lot of vocabulary. Now I want them to be able to use that vocabulary in different ways. So I came up with a list of target questions and also phonics skills, which we've already been doing before. But I want them to use the vocabulary from the previous year or years to ask and answer questions, not to me necessarily, but also to each other. So for example, the word can, they can ask, can you do something? And then they can say, I can do something. And then they can talk about their classmates, he can, whatever, she can, whatever. So using can with different action words, for example, maybe learning about what animals can do, comparing it to themselves. And by phonics, for example, rhyming. We're doing a lot of rhyming now. I'm teaching them CVC structures. And I'm still doing projects, but the projects are just getting bigger. one project I'm doing now is more year long. They're making a book that's it's called All About Me. So every week they're adding a new page to the book. Of course, the first was just the title. A second page is a drawing of their face, but more and more it's going to be like my favorite food. So I'm going to have them write out the name of the food they like and draw a picture of it. Later on, they'll be able to write about what they can do, what they want to be in the future, their dislikes, their families, whatever. So I'd like them to build up this book, and at the end of the year, I'll give them the book. They can take it home, and now they have a whole book involving a lot of English about themselves. So with this curriculum, my goal is for them to be able to communicate to each other more, not just with me. So this is student to student. And one of the last parts here will be
I just want to give you a heads up before you start, Martin. You have 5
oh,
minutes.
sorry.
Yeah, but just
5 minutes. Okay, perfect. Yeah. Go back in here. So to talk, last part pretty much is for me to talk about my daily lesson structure. So the day-to-day type of thing rather than the big curriculum. All my lessons have a very similar structure, whether it's the little kids or the older kids. It's just the materials, the themes change. I start off with an opening song and a greeting. I have a list of opening songs. I always recommend the YouTube channel Super Simple Songs. They have a lot of good songs that seem to be tailor-made for kids who are learning English as a second language. So we start with the same song. I greet the students. That's when we do the daily helper part. Then we have circle time. So no matter what the topic or theme is, I'm going to ask them the day, the month, the date, the weather. You can also add in color, shape, letter of the day. Anyway, so they have that kind of stability. Children, especially at this stage, they really respond well to stability. They know that we're going to start with the opening song. They know that we're going to have circle time after that. You can change the content, but the structure is going to be the same, and they feel really comfortable with that, and it helps their confidence a lot, I think. I'll do a short warm-up game just to engage them and get them ready for the English lesson. Then we go into vocabulary with flashcards. I don't like to just show flashcards. There's a lot of games you can do, like memory. You put all the flashcards on the floor, you have them close their eyes, you take one or two of them away, open their eyes, what's missing, or show it really fast, speed, what did they see, flip the card fast. Then I have always a song and or a book connected to that vocabulary theme, followed by a game, phonics game, or maybe a craft. And then you end with, again, the helper's choice. So the helper is going to choose either a book or a song that they want to end the class with. And then you have your ending song. So that's my typical lesson structure. And the last part here is challenges. So if you could write in the chat, what are some of the challenges that you face in your lessons in your own curriculum planning? After this, the last slide I have is some of the challenges I have faced. So let's take a look at the chat here. Let's see. Says Grant Osborne asking, would you be able to tell us the times? What do you mean by times for activity?
How much time do you spend on each activity, basically?
Oh, okay. For the youngest kids, yeah, the what is it? Caterpillar class, yeah, no more than 4 to 5 minutes. I've got to move quickly from thing to thing. For the older kids, it really depends on their attitude and atmosphere. It's pretty easy to tell early on if they're just not into it. So I'll end it a little early and try it another time. But if they're really into it, I'll let it go for longer. But I would say for a lot of the phonics games and activities we do, especially where they're at a table, I would say close to 10 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes perhaps. Phonics, yeah, phonics is a tough one. That's something I'm still figuring out. I don't have any actual academic training in phonics, so I'm sort of learning myself. Not having enough time. Yeah, that's a big one. 50 minutes, yeah. How do I assess students' acquisition, not overexposure? Yeah, that can also be very difficult. I have some students whose parents speak English and they use a lot of English at home, so they're going to definitely, um, you know, pick up the language at a different speed than the other kids who don't. I think for me, it's just assessment is just a really tough one. Like because the school I work for, it's kind of there is a company that runs it, and there is sometimes a push to to show how much English do these kids know. We want to show the parents, we want to show the kind of advertise, they want to make PR. So there's been a lot of push for how many words do they know, how fast can they speak, um, and I sometimes struggle against that.
Now, real quick, before we continue on, Martin, it is 5:35, which is when this panel
Oh,
is normally
sorry.
supposed to end.
Okay.
But you're the last presenter, so I wanted to ask Wayne, what do you think about just going on for another 5-10 minutes? If anyone wants to keep asking questions and so on, do you think that's okay, Wayne? If you're there. Okay, great. He says he's keen. Yeah, so if you do need to go and you feel like, oh, it's 5:35, I gotta get out of here, please feel free. But since Martin's the last presenter, we're gonna give him some more time to field questions and so on. But since dinner time's coming, why don't we say about 5 to 10 minutes, Martin? You can put it in that.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I think I just 3 minutes should be fine for me to
Okay,
show the
great.
last slide.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. Okay, let me get back into it. Yeah, the last point was just the challenge that I've faced. One, going back to the assessment, the goals. What are reasonable goals for this age? Especially because if you're teaching junior high school or high school, you know what the tests are, you know what the textbooks are. They need to take maybe the center exam or something like that, or maybe ACAN. But for this age, especially elementary school lessons, they start in the 3rd grade right now. So when my kids leave my school into elementary school, they're going to have 2 years with no English at all. So I can't bridge the English. Also, the English they're getting at 3rd grade is really, I'm sure everybody knows, is quite basic English. So bridging that gap or connecting them is I don't know quite how to do it. Also, parent expectations, that can be really hard. I've had parents who took their kid out of the school and went to another school because they weren't happy with the amount of English their child could speak, and that child happened to be less than 1 year old and couldn't even speak Japanese. So I don't really know what was going on there, but it happens. Maturity and social skills, I've mentioned before. Like, I go in with a lesson plan, and then I look in the classroom in the morning and I see a couple kids fighting, and I know, okay, this game's not going to work because they're going to be in this mood. So I have to change it suddenly. And also, big one, students entering throughout the year. In my current, the older kids class, I have a 5-year-old who's been there for all 3 or 4 years now, and then I have another kid of the same age who just started in this month in April. So he's starting from 0. So how do I balance that out so that both kids are getting what they need from the class? It's hard. That can be really difficult. And yeah, I'm sorry I've gone over time. If there are specific questions, here is my email address if anybody has comments, questions, feedback. Here's the QR code also for the presentation itself if you want to see all the slides that I made. But I want to say thank you to everybody for staying this long and putting up with me. Thank you very much, Kurt, for being a great moderator and helping me out with all this. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anywhere to go. So if anybody has other things they want to ask or questions, and I see, Alan has put here a quote about multiple intelligences. It is not a perfect theory, and there are a lot of there's a lot of research against it. I don't follow it too much, but it's more I just use it to give me some ideas about how. So I don't, because I'm a visual type learner for me. So I'm more comfortable with visual stuff, but I don't want to do that too much for my students. So I try to use those the theories, the eight points to make sure that I'm using different styles of learning so that different kids get different kinds of media and exposure.